Good evening, everybody, and this is Hadrim. I've got another card review for you guys. This will be my sixth one, and we have quite a few to release, so we'll go ahead and get started. The first one is Stitched Tracker. This is a 3-mana 2/2 beast, and it's common. Battlecry, discover a copy of a minion in your deck. Now, this card is a very important card for Hunter. And the reason why is because a lot of the synergies that you have with Hunter actually occur with either a beast, which this card is not, or it occurs with some kind of spell that summons something or a spell that removes something. This card is the value card that any other deck would want, except Hunter. But it's very powerful, and it will still see some good play, I think. I really just think. So a 3-mana 2/2. You can run very few impactful minions with this card, and Hunter decks in the past have actually done that. They've run more like secrets and spells and weapons, and they ran very few minions. So you can use this card to double up on your minion. This card is insane with a mage card that was released, Manic Soulcaster, back in the Mean Streets of Gadget Zan. However, since they're different classes, you can't really compare them that well. But it has a very similar effect where you can shuffle a card that you've already played back into your deck. This card will discover a minion from your deck. Now, it's basically a minion version of Shadow Visions in a way that you can... It's exactly what it is. It's a minion version of Shadow Visions. So you can utilize it to pretty much guarantee the fact that you're getting something out of your deck, as long as you're putting in cards like the Hunter Legendary that they came out with, Professor Putricide. You can use it with Savannah Highmanes as just a general kind of beast. You can also use it for very key minions like Cloaked Huntress for all your secret synergy. And I think the card will be good in certain control matchups for Hunter, and it's definitely going to be experimented with. I'm looking forward to playing it. I think it's pretty cool. You have Ice Walker. It's a 2-mana 1/3, and your hero power freezes the target. I actually don't like this card. I think it's bad. But I actually think it would see a good deal of play. And this card is specifically for mages that rely on Cold Wraith. This card enables Cold Wraith more consistently than any other freeze mechanic in the game, because it has long-term value potential to be able to constantly keep a minion frozen. And that's probably very impactful. The downside is that the body is weak. It would only see play in very specific matchups and very specific mage decks. It is an elemental, and mage elemental cards are definitely going to be an increase in their power level. So this is probably evenly statted for its cost. On the other hand, if you want to freeze a target, you'd probably be running Glacial Shard. This is basically 4-mana freeze. We had something similar like this in the past. Hunter actually had a card, Steam Weedle Sniper, that allowed your hero power to target minions, so you can deal 2 damage to a minion. But it was a minion that interacted with your hero power in order for you to gain some kind of board advantage. This kind of does something very similar, except this is a 2-mana 1/3 in a deck that utilizes other things to help control the board. Even though Steam Weedle Sniper didn't exactly work in Hunter, because Hunters didn't exactly run the board control game, this card also doesn't work in Mage, because Mage has a bunch of board control tools, especially for early game. So instead of freezing the minion with your hero power, just kill it. This works on big minions, but you can fireball them. You can Flame Strike a bunch of minions, you can Meteor big minions, you can Polymorph minions. Just do that. You don't really have to run this card. It has synergy with Cold Wraith, but that's about it. In Arena, it actually might be okay. It might actually be subpar, but it's not dead in the water. Embrace Darkness. Priests get a 4-mana discount on Mind Control. Just what everyone wanted, right? 6 mana, choose an enemy minion at the start of your turn, take control of it. So Yeah, you know that Tyrion you just played? Well, good news, it's mine now. You know that Val'kyr you just played? Good news, it's mine now. So this is actually slower than Mind Control, and it's also slower than Entomb. It's actually kind of bad in the way that your opponent still has one turn to deal with to use the minion before you take control of it. It's the same as Corruption in that way. And Corruption was actually starting to see some marginal use in control Warlock decks, and the Reno decks especially. So Embrace of Darkness might actually replace Mind Control in a lot of those decks, but the problem is that it's just too slow. This would be played on a larger minion that you would want to take. When you take control of the minion, of course, it doesn't attack. So at the start of your turn, it swaps positions on the board, but you still can't attack with it until your next turn. But you can take your opponent's highly impactful, expensive card that they played, and then just take it for yourself. But you have to take a little bit of damage first, and your opponent gets to take advantage of the value first before they give it to you. So it's interesting. It's slow. It's very slow, and it may actually not be worth playing just because it's 6 mana. Now 6 mana is a huge discount from 10 mana, and it actually might make a difference in a lot of matchups being 6 mana instead of 10 mana. But Mind Control was also 8 mana to begin with, and it was nerfed to 10 mana in the official release of Hearthstone. So having a 2 mana more discount on a slower card might seem balanced, but I don't think it's it's comparable to Entomb, but Entomb was much faster since it removed the minion right away. Still gave it to you, and you can still utilize a battle cry if you need to. This is really only wants to hit targets that are very high impact, like Ysera, like Tyrion Forging, Val'kyr, cards of that nature that are individually very powerful by themselves and that have a big impact on the board. Other than that, it's probably not worth playing. And then, speaking of another priest card that's not worth playing, we have Archmage. Archbishop Benedictus, 7 mana, 4/6. Battlecry, shuffle a copy of your opponent's deck into your deck. Now, this has a very similar feel of the Dead Man's Hand, except there's one drawback. It's a minion you have to play on turn 7. It's understated for its cost, and you saturate your card pool with essentially random cards from your opponent that do not synergize with your deck at all, and you still have to draw them first before you can play them. This card is actually really bad. I like the flavor of the card. It's a fun card to play. It's just not going to see any competitive play. 7 mana, 4/6 that shuffles a bunch of cards into your deck. Now we have a card already in the standard. It's a 5 mana, 5/6 that shuffles 5 minions into your deck, and you don't even have to play it. It just does it for you. Merry Christmas. This card isn't really all that great. It's good to have if you plan on playing the value game against another control deck. You can take all their tools, especially if your opponent is a warrior who just played their Dead Man's Hand. You can basically copy their deck and then take their Dead Man's Hand. There's some very, very complicated shenanigans you can run with this deck, with this card. It's just not going to be good enough in constructed play. And honestly, it may not even be that good in Arena. Although I do say that if you plan on playing a long Arena game as a priest deck, playing this card on curve, let's see, I actually did some of the numbers. Playing this card on curve, you're going to get anywhere between 15 and 18 cards from your opponent. Now, that's accounting for if they draw at least 1 to 3 cards in the 7 turns that you waited to play this card. So, you shuffle at minimum, or maximum if you want, 15 cards is probably the best scenario you have. You shuffle 15 cards into your deck against a control deck. So they have a bunch of control tools, but then they don't synergize with your deck at all. They're just kind of sitting there. This card is actually pretty insane in a mirror matchup, but in most every other matchups, it's too slow. It saturates your card pool. You're going to get a lot of value, but you're not going to get anything else out of this card. So I really think it's not that great. Gnomeferatu, 2 mana, 2/3, Warlock minion. Now, this is the first battle cry I've seen where it actually targets your opponent's resources directly. Remove the top card from your opponent's deck. Just destroy it. They don't even have to have 10 cards in their hand. You just completely remove them from one of their resources. And that's very cool in this game where you don't really... that relies a lot of minion combat. It relies a lot of card generation. This card, which attacks your opponent's resources directly, is very cool. And it's got a very good stat line. 2 mana, 2/3 is always going to see some kind of play. The thing is that the card has such wide variance that if you're always going to be a card ahead whenever you're playing this card, since you played the Gnomeferatu and you basically destroy your opponent's card. So no matter what it is, I mean, even if it's something like a mid-game minion that they were planning on drawing the following turn. So you deny them the next card that they're going to draw, but really all you're doing is milling them one, and there's such wide variance with that it may not be good enough to merit a spot in a deck, but I really like the design of the card. I actually think that the card is pretty good if you plan on facing those kinds of decks that like to shuffle cards into their deck, like with the cards I just reviewed. So it may be good against that, but one at a time is not going to be good enough if your opponent's putting 15 cards in their deck at a time, or 10 cards in their deck at a time. It's cool. I like the flavor. I just don't... it might see some good play. And there's definitely going to be some highlights of this card destroying your opponent's most sought-after card in their deck. Like, if you happen to destroy your opponent's Archmage Antonidas, yeah, you did good. You did really good. Val'kyr Soulclaimer is a 3 mana 1/4 warrior minion. Whenever this minion survives damage, summon a 2/2 ghoul. Alright, so Warriors had one of these cards in the past. And they've actually had 2 of these cards in the past, but one of them was a neutral, and that was Grim Patron. The other card that was Warrior is Axeflinger. So you have these 2 cards where, when they survive damage, they did something on the board. So you can either Whirlwind the board, or you can play something like Cruel Taskmaster or Inner Rage to activate them yourself, and they have an effect. So Axeflinger dealt 2 damage to the enemy hero, and of course everyone was getting in here when Grim Patron got damaged. If it survived the damage, it would summon another Grim Patron, which has the same effect of summoning another Grim Patron. That's what made the card very powerful. This card is very weak. And the fact that, yes, you can damage it to summon a 2/2 ghoul, but you already have a card that can do that. Blood to Ichor. So when you're damaging this card, if this card sticks and it manages to trade into a minion and survive, and you get a 2/2 afterwards, it's a 3 mana 1/4 with a Death Rattle to summon a 2/2. And generally that's probably okay. 3 mana, you kind of have some similar division of stats when you have the little Harvester card, which is a 2/3, it summons a 2/1. But this card is very weak. It's very weak by itself. I mean, Whirlwind decks don't really want to play this card because eventually it's going to die off. You're going to kill off your ghouls, and you're not going to really gain much headway with this card. It's not all that great. It's got nice flavor. It's got the combo potential for a very cheap card, which doesn't need to be, but it's there, but it may not be strong. It definitely wants to be play on the turn before you play your weapon, Bloodraiser, because you get a 1/3 and a 2/2 with a battle cry. So it might be alright, but I think it's just going to bomb. I don't think it's that great. Sorry, warrior. Alright, and now we get to this card. Meet Wagon. 4 mana 1/4. Death Rattle. Summon a minion from your deck with less attack than this minion. Now, this is impressive, because it's a very bad effect, unless you have a very specific card in mind when you're playing the card. So, the only 2 or 3 cards that I could even think of that this would work well with is Doomsayer and Manatide Totem. Maybe Flametone Totem. And that's it. There's very little 0-drop minions in the game. Now, that's a one-dimensional way of thinking about this card. Here's how you really think about the card. Is that whatever attack this thing has when it dies, it'll summon a minion from your deck with 1 less attack than that. So, with that in mind, you can buff the card. Like, say you have something like a Blessing of Kings, or a Mark of Nature, or something like that new Cryostasis card we found somewhere. And you can increase its attack value to widen the range of minions that it can pull from your deck. And as clunky as that sounds, and as clunky as I just sounded saying that's a word sound, it may have some merit, because at every point in Hearthstone that we've ever had a minion that summons something from your deck, it always saw some kind of play. Like, we're seeing Finja. You saw cards like Varian Wren being played in Warrior. In Tempo Warrior, you actually played a 10-cost card because it pulled 3 minions from your deck. Anytime we ever had any kind of thing that pulls something from your deck instantly, it was always seeing some kind of play somewhere. So I don't want to doubt the power level of this card too much. It is a mech. There are some minor synergies with that, although they've kind of only exist in wild format. But that might actually be impactful for that format. And not only that, there's also some synergies with buff cards with this thing, with hand buffing also. And it could have a very good impact. This is probably the minion you want to Kelazeth, by the way. Because this way it infects 2 minions instead of just 1 by itself. Would you run Kelazeth in that deck? No, I don't think it pushes Kelazeth. But it does enable for some serious card generation value from your deck if you can get it buffed up put enough. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. It follows up on some buff turns where you can seriously get some value with it, trade up, and then summon something from your deck that's more durable. It can work. But by itself, even by itself, it could pull Doomsayer from your deck if your opponent decides to kill it. It's not bad. Not bad at all. Now we have Cobalt Scalebane. It's a 5 mana 5/5 dragon. At the end of your turn, give another random minion +3 attack. Now, that's actually kind of a really powerful effect for Arena. This little dragon theme might actually pick up some steam in wild format, of course. There's not enough dragons in standard format to pick up from that. This actually is a very good play after Twilight Drake. So if you play a Twilight Drake with a bunch of health, and then you play Cobalt Scalebane right behind it, you just played a 4 mana 7/7 at least. You can actually play a 4 mana 7/7 and not have a downside. It does trigger at the end of your turn, so it's not a very immediate effect. It's not like Dark Iron Dwarf, which gives +2 attack to a minion instantly. The 5 mana 5/5 body is actually pretty solid. There's always some use for that in some metas. And it's a common, so you're going to see it a lot in Arena. And I think that Arena might actually make the card playable, since you can play a minion after this or along with it and make it better. Like, if you have a Tar Creeper on the board and then this minion comes down and buffs your Tar Creeper, oh my gosh. That's pretty powerful. But it is probably too slow for constructed play. but being a dragon, you might actually see it pop up here and there in some dragony decks. So, yeah. I like the concept of the card. It's pretty strong in Arena. So I'm looking forward to playing with it. And then I believe this is the last card. Nope, I've got one more. This is Sunborne Val'kyr, 5 mana, 5/4. This is something similar to the Cobalt Scalebane we just saw. And the battle cry, give adjacent minions +2 health. Now this is also a board buffing minion. It does kind of have the same kind of feel that Grimestreak Protector and Paladin has, where it was a 7 mana 6/6 taunt that gave adjacent minions Divine Shield. This is a neutral minion. It's a 5 mana 5/4. It's understated for its cost, but it's essentially got 8 health. But the health is distributed to your other minions on the board. Now, that might actually be pretty influential in Arena. It's not a very powerful card to play in Arena, but I think it's really good. I don't think it's constructed worthy, because playing one minion with 5 mana that relies on you having a board, we've already got plenty of those, and we do not need any more. It's a slow effect, kind of. It doesn't exactly add much power to the board when it's played. It by itself is weak. So I think that I don't really think it's going to be good enough to see constructed play, but in Arena, it's probably an okay card. Yeah, this is the last one I have. Necrotic Geist, 6 mana, 5/3. Whenever one of your other minions dies, summon a 2/2 ghoul. So this is a neutral minion version of the Druid card that with the same effect. Soul of the Forest, which is a 4 mana spell that whenever your minions die, they summon 2/2s treants to replace them. But when you put that tag on a minion, and then you overstat its mana cost, and then make it a very weak body for its mana cost, you're not doing too great. The card's actually pretty bad. It may actually be okay in Arena if you're still like on turn 6. If you're playing like the board control game, you can probably get a 2/2 out of this and kill off your opponent's minion. You can trade up with all your weak minions into one, and then you still have 2/2s left over. So that's pretty cool. There's other minions that interact this way whenever another friendly minion dies. Cult Master comes to mind, which draws you a card every time one of your friendly minions dies. So this card is it's not going to generate that kind of value, but it keeps up your board pressure by summoning a 2/2 instead. So it might have some situational shining moment, but other than that, it's kind of a bad card. And it's probably not going to see constructed play, but being common, you may see it in Arena a few times. It might actually be more powerful in Arena, but the thing is this card basically has taunt on your opponent's turn, and it's a very terrible taunt minion, so you better get your use out of it while you have it. So that's it for my review. If you like the cards that you see, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe to my videos, and we'll be putting out the next review shortly. So we will see you next time. Take care.